So we're going to move on now to the entrepreneurship part of our program, and I want to invite, if he's here in the room, yes, Leith Martin, who is the head of the Troesh Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, to lead a panel on entrepreneurship and innovation at UNLV.
So as Robert and Albert come up, I wanted to say we appreciated the opportunity and entrepreneurship to have an opportunity to spend a few minutes with you today and talk about what we do at UNLV. You know, if you can imagine large organizations like UNLV, sometimes it's pretty difficult to figure out what happens inside from the community. And I think we see that because of the information that we get about entrepreneurship or the questions that we get from the community. So what we thought we would do is take a few minutes to talk about the things that we're doing in different offices across the campus when it comes to entrepreneurship, and also talk about what the community, in terms of resources we have available that you can access at the university when it comes to entrepreneurship. And so the people that I brought up here with me, so once again, my name is Leith Martin, and I'm the Executive Director for the Troesh Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I'm a unit inside the Lee Business School. Robert Ripee is Executive Director of both Blackfire Innovation Hub, which is at Tech Park over by IKEA, as well as the UNLV Incubator. And then Alberto Delgado is actually the program manager or program director. What is your official title? You just got the title a week ago, yes? That's right. Project manager. It should be on now. Try it now. Oh. So he's the project manager at the Small Business Development Center, the Nevada Small Business Development Center. So what I thought we would do is we'll take a few minutes to talk about each one of our different programs, and then we'll talk about specific resources we have available for the community. So Robert, if you don't mind, I'll let you go first.
Sure. Which one do I take? I could do both. So thank you, Leith. So as Leith mentioned, I wear two hats. One is Executive Director for Blackfire Innovation Hub. And if you know Blackfire, it's that beautiful building out by IKEA in southwestern Las Vegas. And that's the beginning of our tech focus at the Harry Reid Research and Technology Park. It's a true tech accelerator. We are almost at capacity in there right now with both startups and tech companies that are using the space to advance innovation, both for hospitality, gaming, entertainment, and many other sectors. We've got an AI startup in there, for example. So this is a really interesting opportunity because we have the facility now where we can take these kind of early stage startups and give them an environment where they can scale up, but also access to tech partners. And these partners are companies like Intel and LG and Panasonic, who we've signed relationships with in that facility, who bring both equipment, expertise, and access to certain types of development that may help accelerate these companies. The second hat I wear, as Leith mentioned, is with our new UNLV Incubator, which is a brand new facility we opened about a month ago in Hughes Center, which is just not too far from here. And the incubator forms that kind of first step place for young entrepreneurs who have come up with an idea and are not quite ready to take it to market because perhaps they don't have an underlying business model, or they don't understand capital structure, or they don't understand a go-to-market strategy. And so we've created the first step in the ecosystem where they can take and come in there and find a location where they're going to be mentored, where they're going to be educated, and hopefully some of them enter the marketplace with their companies. In other cases, they might move on to an accelerator, such as at Blackfire, but in both cases, we've helped to create this kind of ecosystem where entrepreneurship and innovation come together.
Thank you, Leith. We're privileged to be housed at the Blackfire Innovation facility, but Small Business Development Center is part of a national organization, and we're partially funded by the federal government through the SBA to provide business consulting, business advice at no cost. And this could be from anywhere from concept ideas, feasibility, all the way to exit strategy, marketing, financials, working with projections. My expertise is in the financing, so I get a lot of clients that are looking for financing of equipment. Where do I go? Which lender can help me? My background's in alternative financing. All of our other advisors may have expertise in anywhere from marketing to restaurant. We have a restaurant entrepreneur in there right now, and so that's basically what we do. We provide that service at no cost, and we sit down with clients and give them one-on-one counseling service.
Thanks. And once again, I run the Troesh Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation at UNLV. We're primarily inward focused, I would say. There are a few programs that we do run that the community participates in, but we are ultimately responsible for many of the entrepreneurship classes that are taught. For example, small business management, entrepreneurial finance, lean startup classes, how to write a business plan. We also host lots of speakers on campus on a number of subjects in regards to entrepreneurship. We've actually been able to, because of the pandemic, we've been able to bring in founders of companies from Boston, from Silicon Valley, and across the country to speak to students. And because of the virtual environment, we've had as many as 80 or 100 at some of those sessions, with students being able to participate in those. We ultimately also run a lot of workshops on everything you can imagine, from personal branding to how to build your own website. We have authors that come in and talk about books that they've written on entrepreneurship, and book clubs where individuals participate with those authors. Nadine Bennis, who you may have met when you checked in, is our program manager at the Troesh Center and runs many great programs for a lot of our students. But we also have something called the Rebel Venture Fund, which is we have students, we have a VC fund on campus where students actually decide how to ultimately make investments in companies. Those companies aren't necessarily only located in Southern Nevada. We've invested in the last couple of years in a company out of Portland, a company out of Atlanta, another company that we've looked at up in the Northwest as well as some companies in Southern Nevada. So we have the Rebel Venture Fund, so a lot of student experiences that students get the opportunity to not only work with entrepreneurs as mentors or specifically be mentors, but also through the Rebel Venture Fund, they get to actually decide what investments they want to make in companies. So I would say of the three organizations, Robert, in terms of the incubator, spends a great deal of time with students because of the incubator, but a lot of his other work, even though students are involved through Blackfire, is really community-facing and partner-facing with some of the big corporate partners that they have. And then obviously Albert, because of the SBDC, he works with many people who are trying to start companies, whereas our initiatives are a lot more inwardly focused in regards to the things that we do, meaning we spend a lot more time with students in academic environments or in experiential opportunities on campus itself. So why don't we do this? Let's talk a little bit about some of the community-specific things that we do, because oftentimes what happens is as a center director for the Troesh Center, I get tons of calls or tons of emails from individuals who don't know where to start. And so sometimes I'm like a traffic cop. I get an email that says, hey, I want to start a business, and I'm not sure where to start. And depending on the kind of business, I oftentimes will send them somebody through SBDC. So let's spend a little bit of time talking about the resources that we have access to, or the ways that communities can engage the different organizations that we're involved in.
Sure, I'll start. One of the most obvious ways, and I'm glad you used the example of getting calls, because I do get calls from entrepreneurs, startups who are looking to enter the space, and they want to know how they can get involved in Blackfire, for example, to allow them to scale up. And one of the things that the way I look at that is that Blackfire is kind of an open sandbox. It's an open sandbox to help solve industry problems. And if that involves something external to the university, great. Let's bring them in. Let's see how it fits together. I can give you an example of that. Just yesterday, we had a major vendor to many of the companies that are on the Strip in the beverage sector who signed a sponsorship agreement with Blackfire, who's going to bring a specific set of problems to us and look to entrepreneurs to help solve them. Now, those will involve things like advanced technologies in the food and beverage space, and we're going to be completing and building out an advanced technology kitchen in order to support that. So that creates kind of that open sandbox where entrepreneurs who are in that sector can find a home to come in and explore their technology or explore this business model to see if it can take root and scale and solve some economic problem that exists here. The second is, as the incubators, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we just opened this last month, and although right now it's primarily inward-facing towards UNLV student and faculty, eventually it will open to the community. Right now I like to say we are incubating the incubator. Once we get past this phase and we understand how to scale it and how to operate rolling cohorts in the space we have, then we'll open it up to other entrepreneurs who are looking for an incubation.
As far as collaborating with the community, we have several workshops, and we're starting to start workshops in different languages. We have English and Spanish. We have a North Las Vegas hub, which in collaboration with the city there, Workforce Connection, Access Community, CDFI, we're providing opportunities for the businesses in that particular area to go and visit us and to be able to have those services that we provide for the businesses to help them grow, to help them in particular areas of their business, but at the same time collaborating with the city of Las Vegas to provide the needs that they have as well. People are coming to them, they need a source to send their businesses to, and we're providing that service there. I just got off a call a day ago with Clark County wanting to find out how they're going to be able to use their ARP funds, and same kind of concept, being able to provide different kinds of financing that they can't fit traditionally, trying to use grants, trying to use different financing mechanisms to be able to do that. We do partner up with other organizations, McCarran Airport, events to reach out to the community with regards to, in this particular case, how to do work or how to work with or do contracts with McCarran Airport. We're working on programs to scaling companies that want to do government work or want to do larger contract work, and working with them and educating them, getting their financials ready. We're also with the city of Las Vegas, one that's dear to my heart, I guess, because we get a lot of them. People wanting to open up a food truck, and the city is now opening up a space, I think it's December 2nd or something like that, in their location to kind of help the licensing part, all the procedures that they have to go through. So working with the municipalities, working with our sister organizations like SCORE and the Women's Business Center, and being that referral source that we are to SBA, because great majority of the time clients are calling SBA, especially during the CARES and during the pandemic, looking for assistance, and we're being that resource partner for them to be able to answer those questions.
Thanks, Albert. So specifically with the center, we have something called the Southern Nevada Business Plan Competition, Albert, that we've hosted for over 10 years. We didn't host it last year due to the pandemic, but that's a business plan competition that anyone can participate in. We've had community members win it in the past. We've had students win it in the past. Its purpose is specifically around starting companies. We've given away anywhere from $25,000 to $50,000 in cash and another $50,000 to $75,000 in in-kind services, accounting fees, legal fees, things like that, to companies who win the business plan competition, ultimately have a purpose of starting a company. In fact, you can't actually get the money unless you actually start the company. And that's something anyone can participate in. We also have a lot of student-only business plan competitions. We have one we've got starting in February. We've got an idea competition that we're currently running now with student-specific. And then the other thing I mentioned before was the Rebel Venture Fund. If you had a company that is raising money, and these are typically what I would call scalable startups that's interested in raising money, you can go to rebelventurefund.com. You can fill out an application. It takes you to a link, and you can fill out an application. We have a couple students here who are directors of the Rebel Venture Fund, and those students will ultimately go through those applications, bring it to the committee in terms of the student committee, ultimately determine whether or not they want to see a pitch from that potential entrepreneur, and bring them in to do that pitch and decide whether or not they want to make an investment. The checks are relatively small. They typically invest between $25,000 and $50,000. And usually what happens is that if ultimately those investments are successful, the Rebel Venture Fund perpetuates, gets additional money to make additional investments. Those original funds were made through a donation to the university, specifically for the Rebel Venture Fund, and we've raised additional money since that time in order to continue the fund. So my next question, I guess, is in your particular case, Albert, you go first this time. If someone wanted to engage the SBDC, how do they do that? What do they do to get in touch with someone in the SBDC?
Well, we have a website, nevadasbdc.org, And in that particular website, you have a tab on the left-hand side saying that new client or seeking advising. And then you go ahead and enter in your information, and then you're assigned, depending on the type of counseling or kind of guidance that you need, you're assigned to a specific advisor that has that specific specialty. We're part of a state charter, if you will. So there's rural advisors, there's advisors here in Southern Nevada and also in Northern Nevada. So depending on the specialty or the guidance that you're looking for, an advisor will then be paired up with you. You can also call us directly at SBDC at UNLV. We have a website as well there on OED at the Office of Economic Development. And I'm just reaching out to us through our referral partners as well.
One of the interesting things when you hear Small Business Development Center, I know traditionally what comes to my mind is restaurants, and Albert mentioned food trucks and things like that. One of the unique things about our SBDC is because we have a need in our community specifically around, we have a lot of people building scalable startups who don't necessarily, we have, the city has resources, Startup NV, which is a nonprofit here in the state, also helps people that are building startups. There's a new organization called Startup.Vegas that hosted an event downtown just last week that was well attended. So there are lots of different organizations that might help people build scalable startups, but because the demand is pretty high in our community, the SBDC has taken a counselor, his name is Holland Wood, and Holland used to work at Intel. He's built a couple companies in his own right, and he works with companies to get them prepared to raise capital, because that's one of the big efforts the SBDC is focused on, is helping individuals raise capital. In fact, Albert's previous experience, you were the microlender in his previous role before he came to SBDC. So they try to help companies get prepared to receive capital, either through an SBA loan or through funding of some kind. And Holland has built, we'll call it a mini practice, I guess, inside the SBDC, where he works with people who are building scalable startups. And in fact, just a month or so ago, we hosted an event where we brought in a couple of venture capitalists, and those entrepreneurs presented to those venture capitalists, and a few have actually decided to make investments in those companies. So that's a bit unique, I say, from our SBDC relative to many, in that most SBDCs kind of are somewhat focused on what I would call traditional community-based brick-and-mortar businesses, but our SBDC has kind of built a little expertise around that as well. Robert, in terms of engagement with your organization, Blackfire specifically, but also the incubator, what does that look like? And then maybe even what are some of the, there are things that we can provide in terms of support for the community, but there are also things that we need. So kind of think about some of the things that you might need there in terms of asks, mentors, those kind of things as well. So.
A great question, by the way, and we'll start there. So mentors are always needed. Right now there are 8 startups in the 2 incubator cohorts at in the facility at Hughes. And we've got a list of about 25 mentors in everything from business modeling to capital structure, but we could never have enough, because when I need you, you may not be available. So it's always to have a B squad and a C squad and backup. So that's one way. That's the easiest way to engage with us. Blackfire is getting a hold of us, getting in touch, and then coming out and taking a look and seeing what we have and who we've partnered with and what type of projects are going on there and how that may impact, or you can impact those as well. I want to add something to what you said when you were talking about Holland a little while ago and how non-traditional SBDC is here. So last night, Holland actually lectured one of the cohorts at the incubator on SBIR grants, so Small Business Innovation Research grants, and opened their mind to some free sources of capital that could help accelerate what they're doing. And that type of integration between the 3 of us happens on a daily basis, and it's one of the powers, I think, of UNLV. Back to Blackfire again. There are a number of ways. I do teach a class each semester. It's called the Innovation Lab, and it is a problem-based innovation course where it's multidisciplinary. So I have students from engineering, from computer science, from business, and from hospitality, et cetera, basically across campus. And we pick specific problems, and we look for innovative solutions. Now, this semester, one of the integrated resort companies approached me with 2 very specific problems, and we brought them into the class in almost a co-creation format, where we've said, okay, here are the 2 real problems, And the student teams are working on solutions to those problems, which they reverse pitch back to the integrated resort company as potential solutions. So this could be the start of something very interesting, or it could be a great academic exercise. But in either case, it's a great way to integrate with both Blackfire and the incubator. I like the idea of this co-creation, where we start with a real-world problem and then apply innovative thinking to solve it. And we see that in all of the programs we do, but probably more so in areas like Blackfire and the incubator.
You know, when I was listening to your comments, one of the things that I thought that I didn't actually do is I mentioned that I'm a unit inside the Lee Business School. Robert is actually inside the Office of Economic Development, and then so is Albert in terms of the SBDC. And so we're actually in the university, we're in different parts of the university, but we actually do a great deal across the different units. Because, for example, I manage something called the National Science Foundation I-Corps grant program on campus. So what the National Science Foundation does is they typically, on an annual basis, fund somewhere between $7 and $8 billion in what they call translational science research across the United States. And at UNLV, we have what's called an I-Corps Site Grant, where we get these small micro grants that we give to student teams or faculty teams where they've developed some sort of research in a lab, and we try to determine whether or not it's commercially viable. So in other words, you know, I have this really unique enzyme. It has some potential possibilities in the biotech industry. We don't really know who the customer is. What do we need to do to try to figure that out? And then we actually build workshops around that, trying to figure out what that potential market opportunity is. And then what we can do after that is we can send them to work in the incubator afterwards. And even potentially if there's a funding opportunity with the SBDC in terms of preparing them for funding. So there's a lot of programs that we do, and Robert talked about his hospitality classes that he does in terms of his workshops or his labs. Some of the students that come through my class, which I teach the technology commercialization class in the College of Engineering, actually end up in the incubator. There's a couple of students that are actually in Robert's incubator right now that came out of my class, and they came through the traditional student design or student senior design process, where they were working in senior design, developed a product that they think might actually be commercially viable, brought it to my class, worked on the class itself, and now we're in the incubator trying to figure out how to build a business around that particular product or service. So I think that there's a lot of collaboration that takes place organizationally in terms of infrastructure. We're not even in the same organization, but there's a lot of stuff that's happening across the campus. And I would say that's not uncommon at many university campuses, but I think the uniqueness of not only our student body, meaning some of you may not know this, but the average undergraduate age in the College of Business at UNLV is in the mid-20s. So we have a very non-traditional student. I mean, the reality is that our students aren't traditionally 18 to 22. They're 23, 24, and most of them have worked somewhere else in town, probably in a service job, which means they have a high level of emotional intelligence because of those roles, and then come back to school. And so many of them have side hustles. They have part-time jobs. And so they're very in tune of understanding how business works and how starting companies and what they can do with that. So I think it's a unique environment. I actually look at that as a fairly significant strength of UNLV. I would be shouting from the rooftop that every one of our graduates from the business school are 24 to 25 years old, at least, maybe 27, 28, and all of them have 4 to 5 years work experience. And that's not something that most universities can use or tout in terms of the opportunity that we have for our students. So next, let's talk a little bit about, in terms of, and I'm not sure, I can't think of specifically an ask for the SBDC. Do you have an ask of the community? Is there something that you guys use in terms of community resources or things that you, because I mean, you're the counselors, you don't necessarily mean mentoring like oftentimes we do, and I can't think of anything, but if there's something I'm missing, fill me in, I'm not sure.
I was asked to be careful with this, but we are growing, and so we're always looking for individuals that can fit that role that we do. Where every single advisor just has a heart for working with individuals and listening to their dreams and what they're wanting to put together, and it's a different kind of individual. Coming from the banking industry, it was all about closing the deal and getting on to the next one. And it's been a small change because I was a little bit different of a salesperson. It took probably a little bit more time than the boss would like for me to take with particular clients. But this kind of role that I'm in now, it just allows me to share that time and share my experience with the individuals. So yeah, we're growing. So an ask would be, if you know somebody that fits the bill there. I also wanted to take advantage of this little minute just to talk about our Rebel Forge group within SBDC, which is a student-led advising role just for students. So we have a couple of business students and accounting students in that role, and they're basically a junior advisor. They're learning from us, but they're running that portion of the department. They do have a little fund that they are allowed to do to fund certain items. One success story is a young lady that had a e-commerce business selling flowers. So I was looking at these flowers. I was like, yeah, it's pretty good money she's making on that if you know the markup that you can do on flowers. But just the student was able to assist her with some really basic bookkeeping. You'd be surprised with how long people have been in business and there's still bookkeeping problems. But just help her with a very simple spreadsheet, help her get some understanding of what she needed to do with her books, find profit margin, find her cost of goods, and just working on her with that. And we're able to fund a little portion of her business here soon. But these students are then encouraged to come up with the business case to convince me that we should fund them. So it's a great learning opportunity for the students. And again, there's interns that we also help become advisors as well. So we'd like to grow our own. But at this particular time, an ask would be some more talent to be able to help us, because we are expanding into different chambers and also different municipalities with regards to our offices.
You know, I mentioned before the uniqueness of our SBDC. The counselors that we have at our SBDC are, I mean, we have Holland, who has actually started multiple companies and has gotten an SBIR and used to work at Intel. We got Albert, who used to work in finance, which is a big deal because most of these businesses are trying to find money, and he's one of the counselors as well. We've got other counselors that have started multiple companies. We've got another counselor who just returned, who has been with an SBDC in New York. The SBDC here used to work for Disney and started a big food distribution company in Southern California, in South Florida at one time in his past. So these individuals have all done this, and they really are phenomenal resources. I don't think people realize the significance of the level of counseling they get when they show up. I can remember Andy bringing deals to me when he was with the SBDC before, and we would sit down and work with the entrepreneur, help them fine-tune their pitch, make sure that we put them in front of the right people that might have the opportunity to make investments. And they didn't always get investments, but the reality is they learned a lot either from the counselor or from those opportunities. So I can't say enough about what our SBDC does in terms of our community. I think that Albert, I'm sure, would tell you that the demand is way higher than the resources they have available, but they serve a tremendous opportunity in terms of entrepreneurs here in the Valley. So, Robert, if you can take just a few minutes, I'm interested. You know, Blackfire is such a unique organization or opportunity for Southern Nevada, because I don't think people understand the significance of the interactions that take place in that building. And let me give you an example. Last year we hosted something called the Lee Prize. It was a competition that the business school, with the help of Greg Lee and his family trust, provided $1 million, that we hosted a global competition to allow us to identify companies who are working on innovations that would allow travel, hospitality, and entertainment recover as quickly as possible from the pandemic. And we launched that competition in April, 1 month after we'd shut down our economy. And we attracted companies. We attracted 250 applications from all over the world. We had companies from Dubai. We had companies from Western Europe. We had companies from all across the United States that submitted everything you could imagine, from cleaning methods to different types of payroll systems or cashless systems, everything you could imagine. And several of those companies that won, one was a company out of Austin, Texas called MadeBot, who had developed this really sophisticated Roomba. And I know it doesn't sound as sexy as it actually is, because it turns out these devices actually talk to each other when they're on the floor, And imagine in a convention space at night, all of these vacuum cleaners go out. They all communicate with each other, so it doesn't matter if you change the setting in the night before, and they vacuum the whole place and they go back. And I couldn't figure out at the time why many of our judges thought that was such a big deal. And I remember asking Bill Hornbuckle, I was like, Bill, why is this such a big deal for operations in the integrated resort world? And he said, I can't hire enough people to clean, and now I have to clean more than I've ever had to clean. And if I can take 20% of that job and let a computer do that or a robot do that, that's a big deal for me. And so that company has sent Robert several of their prototypes, and we have them at Blackfire, and you can go in and see those, and they're actually opening a sales group here later in the first quarter next year. That's the kind of interactions that are taking place at places like Blackfire.
Well, not only do we have 5 of the bots there, they have lent us their expertise. So we have two student startups that are working in robotics, and they've allowed them to speak to their CTO and chief of engineering to help them answer some questions. So there's this kind of relationship that happens at Blackfire that's not specifically just to help you scale, but we want something in return. We want you to help our endemic teams to prosper and to overcome some technical obstacle. And so Micah and his team at MadeBot have been terrific about this, always open to saying, yeah, happy to talk to your student teams, let's hear what they're doing, and let's see if we can help them in some way. And we find that's true across all of the partners that we call them partners at Blackfire. And at last count, I think there are over 70, and that includes the big brands like, as I said before, Intel, Panasonic, LG, but it includes companies like MadeBot and companies that are occupying the co-working space down on the 3rd floor, which has become so popular, we're about to expand it into the other half of the 3rd floor. So this momentum that's picked up there is kind of an environment where these companies like MadeBot can come and begin their business development efforts into this market, and at the same time give back to us and help us accelerate what may be another game-changing innovation.
You know, Robert has what he calls the hotel room of the future, is one of the rooms that are inside Blackfire. And you can take the panels off the wall because you can put new tech in the wall anytime you want to try to make adjustments to the hotel room. And one of the interesting things is one of the winners of the Lee Prize is a company called Perlin, which is basically built a 100% recyclable sheet. It's made of plastic, and you can't tell it's made of plastic. It feels just like a high-quality cotton material. And the idea is that you go into the hotel room, you sleep on a sheet that no one else has ever slept on, and when you leave, they take that out, they grind it down, and then they spin a new sheet, and they put a new sheet on the bed the next time. The water usage is like non-existent relative to what would typically cost us to launder sheets in our market, for example. And what's fascinating to me is, you know, he's actually rented an apartment here. He was from Sarasota, Florida, which is another obviously big hospitality area. From Sarasota, Florida, has hired a local individual to help run the team here. Has sheets on the hotel room of the future on the bed in the hotel room of the future. And the idea is that his exact words is, Leith, I don't think you understand, because I was like, why would you be willing to move here? And he says, in this industry, innovation happens in Vegas, and when it starts there, it spreads across the country. So we get adoption in Vegas, we can expand that across the country in a big way. And so they were grateful for the opportunity to participate in the Lee Prize. Those are the kind of interactions that are taking place inside that space. People are moving here just to participate.
And I would add to that, and I'm glad you brought up the hotel room, because it's emblematic of what Blackfire does provide, which we have emulated an entire integrated resort in the top floor of that building. We have 2 hotel rooms, we've got a casino floor, we've got a food and beverage operation, we've got an entertainment space, all emulated at scale in a lab environment. A lab environment meaning we can pull the wall panels down and replace or insert some new technology to test it. We've got an operational sports book in there, we've got an esports arena. So it's created this environment where this technology can be tested in a very safe environment, which operators, which I used to be one, no, you can't. It's very difficult to do that when you have real guests and real regulation affecting you. Here, we have a lab environment. So we have a hotel room that nobody ever sleeps in. We have 2 of them, and they're fully functioning, and it allows us to evaluate these technologies and help these companies move them forward in a very risk-free environment.
So now that we've hyped up some of the things that we do on our campus, one of the things I thought I would do is tell you about how you might gain access and be able to see some of these spaces. For example, the Troesh Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation, we broadcast all of our events across all of our social media platforms. And so we're constantly hosting workshops that members of the community can participate in. Some of the stuff is specifically designed for students, so it's really not applicable to the community members. But if you want to find out about the events that we host, if you want to find out about the Southern Nevada Business Plan competition or participate or tell someone else about it, you can follow all of our social media accounts and find out when we open the applications and those kind of things. I know Robert, for example, and the SBDC, they host lots of events inside Blackfire. In fact, I think last week there was even a blockchain, sometime in the last week there was a blockchain event. The week before that there was an esports event where they talked about esports and the business of esports. So there's lots of events continually being hosted in our specific spaces. And so if you'll follow our social media accounts, you'll see those events. You'll get opportunities to register for those, and you can come in and see many of those spaces. Even inside the incubator space, there are several events, so community events that have taken place over the last month just since we've been open, that if you follow, you might be able to participate in those events as well. So we encourage you to engage. We're asking you genuinely for your help. I think, I've called Las Vegas home for 10 years. I've had multiple chances to leave. I moved here originally to start another company. And I think it's one of the most unique places in the world. And I oftentimes don't even think we fully understand or grasp the significance of this community. And I think people that live other places and come here, they look around and they think, my gosh, at the assets that exist here that don't exist anywhere in the world. So I encourage you to engage with UNLV in any way that you can. We do have a very unique student body. We do have a very unique university, especially relative to many public schools across the United States. And a lot of that is driven by the assets that exist inside our community. So we're grateful for the opportunity we had to share with you the things that we have in regards to startup or entrepreneurship around our community, and we appreciate your attendance today. And I'll throw it back to Andrew because I think he's got just a few minutes, but they've got something else coming up. Thank you so much. Thank you.